Johnny Carson guests who were too honest on live TV. When Johnny Carson asked a question on The Tonight Show, most stars stuck to safe stories, cute little tales, funny lines they practiced, and pushing their new movies. But not everyone followed those Hollywood rules. Some guests just didn't care and chose to be totally honest, even with millions of people watching. The results. Awesome TV moments that left Carson with nothing to say, bosses at the network freaking out, and everyone in America glued to their screens. From 1962 to 1992, The Tonight Show was something America watched every night. Before people shared everything online or on podcasts, Carson's desk was the place where the country came together to see stars acting like normal, nice people. While most stars came ready with stories they practiced over and over, a few rare ones used their short time with Johnny to share hard truths that people still talk about many years later. What made these moments so strong wasn't just the words, but how real and true they felt. In a time when stars tried hard to look perfect, these 6 guests showed something real. Whether America was ready or not, their straight talk made some of the most unforgettable TV moments ever, and sometimes even changed how people talked about big issues. So, what makes a Carson interview really shocking? It's when the perfect Hollywood picture breaks open and shows the messy, real people behind the fancy looks. And no one did this better than our first super honest guest. Admired actresses and indestructible of all of them. She's had 2 Oscars, 10 nominations, numerous awards. She recently received the Legion of Honor Medal and the César Award from France. Would you welcome, please, Miss Betty Davis? 1B Davis called out Hollywood sexism to Johnny's face. In 1983, Hollywood legend Betty Davis sat across from Johnny Carson, cigarette in hand, with no plan to say the usual nice talk show stuff. At 75 years old, after fighting in the business for many years, Davis had nothing to lose and a lot to say about how Hollywood treated women, especially older ones. "Getting old in Hollywood, you might as well be dead, especially if you're a woman," she told Carson straight up, her voice having that strong Betty Davis style that made her famous almost 50 years before. The audience laughed nervously, but it couldn't hide the hard truth she was giving. Carson, who usually had a quick, funny reply, seemed stuck for a second. This wasn't the easy chat about her new work that he thought it would be. They worship youth and beauty as if it's some kind of achievement, Davis went on, taking another puff from her cigarette. "I've fought for every good role since I turned 40. The men, they become distinguished. We become past our prime." What made this moment so exciting wasn't just what Davis said, but how she said it without feeling sorry for herself, just straight up mad at an industry she helped make, but that didn't want older women stars. She wasn't whining about her own job. With 2 Oscars and tons of great movies, Davis had made sure people would remember her. She was standing up for every actress who would come after her. "When I started in pictures," she went on, tapping her cigarette with perfect timing. Women played women, full, complicated women, not just somebody's girlfriend or wife. Now the industry thinks women over 40 don't exist, or worse, they don't matter. Carson tried to make things lighter, saying maybe things had gotten better for women in Hollywood. Davis's famous eyes got big as she gave a look that could scare anyone. "Improved, Johnny. That's like saying the Titanic improved because a few more lifeboats were added after it sank." She didn't name names. She didn't need to. She said big truths about the unfair rules that hurt her later years, about the roles she lost to younger actresses, about the old studio rules that both helped her and tried to hurt her. Her words weren't just personal fights, but a big complaint about Hollywood's unfair treatment of women and older people, long before people talked about those words a lot. What made Davis's honesty so special was when it happened. In 1983, not many people were openly talking about how Hollywood treated women. Her choice to use her time to say hard truths instead of just talking about her new work showed the strong honesty that made her career so great. But if you thought Betty Davis was super open, wait until you see what our next guest did when the cameras started rolling. Comedian and most inventive, and I think extremely funny. Would you welcome, please, Richard Pryor? 2. Richard Pryor talked about drugs, racism, and mental breakdowns. Richard Pryor's 1980 appearance came soon after his almost deadly accident where he set himself on fire while using cocaine. While his team probably made a safe story for him to tell, Pryor threw that away completely, turning his Carson interview into something more like tea. Alking to a counselor than funny entertainment. "I wasn't trying to kill myself," Pryor said, his voice strangely calm as he talked about the accident right away. "I was just trying to get so high I could touch God's face. Instead, I almost met him for real." The audience waiting for Pryor's usual funny stuff instead saw something much stronger. A super honest talk about drug problems from one of America's smartest funny people. "This ain't a joke, Johnny. I was destroying myself," he went on, looking Carson right in the eyes. "Cocaine isn't a fun drug for me. It's suicide little by little." Carson, clearly touched but careful as a pro, gently tried to move the talk to Pryor's new work coming up. The comedian wouldn't let it go from his sudden deep talk. "People ask why I would do that to myself," Pryor said, not taking Carson's try to make it lighter. "Try being black in America. Try having all the money and fame in the world and still being treated like you don't belong places. Success didn't fix what was broken inside me. It just gave me better drugs to hide it." When Carson gently tried to go to easier stuff again, Pryor said no to the easy way out. He talked openly about racism in Hollywood, calling it a machine that chews people up and saying how fame and money didn't protect him from real racism in America. "You know what's crazier than setting yourself on fire?" Pryor asked, leaning forward, "pretending everything's fine when it's not. I've been doing that my whole career, making people laugh while I'm dying inside. I'm done pretending." What made this interview so big was its raw, open feelings from a black male star in 1980, openly talking about mental health fights, drug problems, and racism without worrying about his job. For people used to stars hiding bad things with practiced sorry words. Pryor's straight honesty was shocking. NBC reportedly asked for changes before the show aired on the West Coast, worried about Pryor's open drug talk. Carson, seeing how important the interview was, said no to big cuts. The result was a TV moment that was more than just fun. Pryor turned a funny spot into a deep talk, and America listened. Speaking of Hollywood's dark side, our next guest didn't just hint at secret stuff. She named names and brought proof. 3. Shelley Winters. Exposed affairs and studio sleaze. When Shelley Winters appeared on The Tonight Show in 1975, she brought more than just stories. She brought proof and a plan to show Hollywood's bad side. Halfway through what started as a normal interview about her new book about her life, Winters reached into her big purse and pulled out an old bikini that right away surprised Carson. "This," she said, holding up the old swimsuit for the camera, "is what I wore when I screen tested with Ronald Reagan in 1949. Before Carson could move the talk back to safe stuff, Winters started a full story about the bad way young actresses got roles in old Hollywood. "You want to know how young actresses really got parts in those days?" she asked Carson, who was clearly uncomfortable. "Let me tell you about the producer who told me I'd get the role if I'd be nice to him." And by nice, he didn't mean bringing him cookies. The audience gasped as Winters easily named powerful studio bosses who had tried to get her to do things early in her career. She told stories of actresses who slept with directors for roles, producers who kept special couches in their offices for that, and how everyone knew new actresses had to do more than just act well. "Johnny, I was lucky," she went on, her voice getting strong. "I was stubborn enough to say no and still have a career. Most girls weren't so fortunate. They either played the game or went home. Carson tried to fix things with nervous laughs, clearly worried about the network rules and possible lawsuits. "Shell, I think we might be getting into dangerous territory here," he warned. "Dangerous for whom, Johnny?" she shot back. These men were predators in expensive suits. Everyone knew it. Everyone looked the other way. Well, I'm not looking away anymore. What made Winter's open talk so shocking was that in 1975, women just didn't make public complaints against powerful men. This was many years before the Me Too movement, in a time when women who spoke up often lost their jobs. Winters, with her good career and multiple Oscars, had the rare chance to say truths others couldn't. She told about affairs between married studio bosses and actresses who needed work, naming specific men who made their Hollywood names while hurting young women. This town was built on talent, yes, she said, but also on the bodies and dignity of women who had no choice but to play along. As Carson tried hard to move back to her book, Winters pulled another thing from her big purse. A list of names. "Should I read this?" she asked with a playful look. Carson almost jumped from his chair to stop her from sharing what looked like a written list of Hollywood bad acts. Audience gasped. Carson sighed. She kept going. She didn't care about Hollywood secrets. She was one of them. If Shelley Winter shocked with her stories, our next guest took open talk to a whole new level of awkward. This the first time we've had him on the show, or at least we've had a chance to meet. Would you welcome, please, Oliver Reed? 4. Oliver Reed drunkenly ranted about hating Hollywood. The moment Oliver Reed walked unsteadily onto The Tonight Show set in 1987, the producers knew they had a problem. The British actor, famous for drinking a lot, was clearly drunk and not in the mood for normal talk show chat. What happened next was 7 minutes of TV that network bosses would rather forget, but people watching would never forget. "You know what's wrong with Hollywood, Johnny?" Reed said unclearly, not listening to Carson's tries to talk about his new movie. "It's run by cowards, absolute cowards who wouldn't know real acting if it punched them in the face." The audience's awkward laugh soon stopped as Reed kept going with his wild complaints. Carson, always good at his job, tried to save the interview by talking about Reed's great acting in Oliver and the Three Musketeers. Reed pushed away the nice words with a hand wave that almost knocked over his water glass. "Those films were decades ago," he said angrily. "Know why you can't mention anything recent?" "Because everything now is garbage. Pure garbage made by money people pretending to be artists." As the interview went on, Reed got more angry, his British accent getting thicker every minute. "These directors today, they're all prostitutes," he said loudly, spilling his drink close to Carson's desk. "They sell out their ideas for whatever the studio wants, and the studios just want garbage that sells popcorn to idiots." Carson tried hard to change the talk, asking about Reed's time working with certain directors. This just gave Reed more people to complain about. "You mentioned Ridley Scott," Reed went on, naming the famous director. "Talented man, absolutely, but he's a slave to the system now, isn't he? They all become slaves eventually. The money's too good to turn down." What made Reed's angry talk so awkward wasn't just that he was clearly drunk, but the bit of truth in what he said. Many people watching at home probably agreed with his thoughts about Hollywood not making good art anymore, even if they were embarrassed by how he said it. "Acting is garbage unless you do it drunk or naked, preferably both," he said with a crazy laugh that scared the network people. "At least when you're drunk, you're honest. There's precious little honesty in this business." The interview ended fast when Reed almost knocked over a set piece, with Carson going to commercial sooner than planned. When the show came back, Reed had been taken off stage with Carson making a short, nice comment about artist moods. Not surprisingly, Reed was never asked back. He didn't burn bridges. He exploded the set. But his drunk, angry talk against Hollywood money focus has become famous late-night story. A rare time when the nice cover of Star interviews broke completely. While Reed's drunken, angry talk might seem hard to top, our next Hollywood legend managed to make equally awkward TV while completely sober. 5. Burt Reynolds admitted he hated certain co-stars. Burt Reynolds, at the height of his fame in 1976, was Hollywood royalty. The charming mustachioed box office king who seemed to get along with everyone. His films grossed millions. His love life filled tabloids, and his easygoing Southern charm made him a talk show favorite. Which is why his super open Carson appearance left people all over America with their mouths open. What started as fun chat took a quick turn when Carson simply asked about Reynolds' time working with certain co-stars. Instead of the usual nice answers about how great and wonderful everyone was, Reynolds leaned in with a playful but serious look. "Some of these people you see me smiling with in photos. I'd love to punch them in the throat," Reynolds said. The audience laughing nervously, unsure if he was joking. The smile on his face suggested humor, but the look in his eyes told a different story. Carson, sensing bad stuff, tried changing the subject, but Reynolds was just getting started. "I won't name names," he said before right away saying something anyway. "But let's just say there's a certain blonde actress who can't remember her lines and treats crew like garbage." The audience all gasped as they thought about Reynolds' recent leading ladies. Reynolds went on, seeming to like the awkward feeling he was making. "There's also a director I worked with last year who's the biggest fraud in the business. Harvard education talks about film theory all day, but couldn't compose a shot if his life depended on it. Complete hack." While Reynolds carefully didn't say exact names, his descriptions were clear enough that people in the business could easily guess who he meant. Carson, looking more and more uncomfortable, tried to save the interview by asking about Reynolds' new work coming up. "Oh, sure. I've got a new film coming out," Reynolds said before right away going back to his Hollywood complaints. "Working with a much better director this time. Not like that last pretentious jackass who thought he was the next Orson Welles but couldn't direct traffic." What made this open talk so shocking wasn't just Reynolds ready to complain about work friends. It was his happy way while doing it. He wasn't coming across as bitter or angry, just casually honest about the fake stuff he saw in Hollywood. "You know what drives me crazy, Johnny?" he went on, not listening to Carson's tries to change the subject. "These actors who talk about their craft and process in interviews. It's acting, not brain surgery. Learn your lines, hit your mark, try not to bump into the furniture. All this method nonsense is just an excuse to be difficult on set." As Reynolds kept giving hints about hard directors and stuck-up co-stars, Carson tried to change it, but the damage was done. The usually nice actor had just broken Hollywood's big rule: never publicly criticize your colleagues. What made this confession so shocking was that Reynolds didn't seem bitter. He was almost cheerful about his disdain for these unnamed colleagues. It was funny until it was dangerously close to real. His revelations pulled back the curtain on the manufactured camaraderie of Hollywood, where stars who secretly despised each other pretended to be best friends for publicity. But even Reynolds's open talk looked small compared to our final guest, who turned shocking honesty into an art form. "Don't compare me with Miss Hems. She owes 60 million Americans. That's 6. Zaza Gabor called herself a gold digger on air." When Hungarian-born socialite and actress Zia Gabor made her 1983 appearance on The Tonight Show, she arrived dripping in diamonds and carrying a flute of champagne despite network rules against alcohol on set. At 66, and on her 8th marriage, Gabor had built a careful image of glamour and too much. But instead of protecting her famous reputation, she went right into it with surprising open talk. "I never hated any of my husbands," she told a clearly shocked Carson while casually sipping her secret champagne. "Some of them just had more money than love." The audience burst into shocked laughter as Carson tried to figure if Gabor was joking. She wasn't. With great knowing of herself, Gabor went on to group her marriages by money and use rather than love, Marriage is too important to be left to love alone, darling, she explained to Carson. I admit it. I married for comfort, not passion. That's so terrible. Carson, trying to give Gabber a chance to make it softer, suggested that surely some of her marriages were based on love. Gabber's response left him with nothing to say. Of course there was love, Johnny, she replied with a dismissive wave of her diamond-covered hand. I love their houses, their jets, their bank accounts. When the audience gasped, she added with perfect funny timing and occasionally, I even loved them. What made Gabber's honesty so refreshing was her complete lack of shame. While other stars carefully said no to any greedy reasons, Gabber accepted her reputation with a wink and a smile. When Carson asked if she was worried about what people thought, she gave the best line, Diamonds last longer than applause, darling. As the interview went on, Gabber gave a surprising deep reason for her way of marriage. In America, you have this romantic notion that marriage must be about passion. She explained, in Europe, marriage has always been a practical arrangement. I'm just honest about it, while American women pretend otherwise. She told how she had taught her rich husbands to like her wants for fancy things. Men are like children, she advised the women in the audience. They need clear rules. Mine were simple. I expect jewelry for putting up with you. The audience's shocked laughter only encouraged her further revelations. Perhaps most shocking was Gabber's open thought about her own charm. I was never the most beautiful woman in the room, she admitted, going against her careful image. But I was always the most interesting. Beauty fades, but knowing how to make a man feel important and how to make him pay for the privilege, that's a skill that never grows old. Carson looked stunned. She sipped champagne. She owned it and didn't care who was watching. When honesty changed television, these 6 guests represent more than just shocking moments in television history. They mark important turning points when the carefully manufactured veneer of celebrity culture momentarily cracked, allowing viewers a glimpse of something authentic in an increasingly scripted landscape. The stakes were high for the guests. These moments of honesty risked future career opportunities in an industry that values pleasant, marketable personalities over authenticity. For Carson, they threatened the comfortable formula that had made him a television institution. For networks, they represented dangerous unpredictability in an era when television was supposed to be safe, controlled entertainment. What's remarkable is how these moments of brutal candor stand in stark contrast to today's heavily managed celebrity appearances. Modern talk show guests arrive with pre-approved anecdotes, media training, and publicists hovering just off camera. The possibility for genuine surprise, whether uncomfortable or reveille, has been largely engineered out of the celebrity interview process. These Carson moments remind us of a time when television still had the capacity to shock, not with carefully planned stunts, but with authentic human expression. Each of these guests, in their own way, chose truth over image management. Substance over style, authenticity over career safety. The tension between authentic expression and entertainment industry expectations reached its peak during these interviews. As audiences, we couldn't look away, not just because of the scandal, but because of the rare opportunity to see famous people as they really were, flaws and all. Why these moments still matter? What's most fascinating is how these brutally honest moments, initially considered scandalous, have aged into something approaching heroism. Betty Davis's complaints about ageism and sexism now seem prophetic rather than bitter. Richard Pryor's raw discussion of addiction helped destigmatize conversations about mental health. Shelley Winter's exposes of predatory behavior preceded the #MeToo movement by decades. Even the more controversial moments, Reed's drunken rants, Reynolds' colleague bashing, Gayor's materialistic approach to marriage offered something television rarely provided: unfiltered celebrity truth. In an era of increasingly controlled media access and crafted public images, These Carson guests remind us of a time when stars could still surprise us with their honesty. For better or worse, Johnny Carson himself deserves credit for creating an environment where such candor was possible. Unlike many modern talk shows where questions are often pre-approved and topics restricted, Carson's Tonight Show maintained an element of spontaneity that allowed for these remarkable moments of truth. His ability to adapt when guests went off script, sometimes playing along, sometimes attempting damage control, but always maintaining professional composure, created the perfect conditions for authentic television. These moments also reflect changing standards in what was considered acceptable television content. From Davis's feminist critiques to Pryor's discussions of drug addiction to Winter's allegations of sexual harassment, many of these honest moments helped expand the boundaries of what could be discussed on American television. Issues once considered taboo became part of the national conversation precisely because celebrities were willing to address them honestly on platforms like Carson's. Perhaps most importantly, these moments remind us that celebrities are complex human beings, not the carefully constructed public personas their publicity teams work so hard to maintain. Davis's righteous anger, Pryor's struggles with addiction, Winter's experiences with harassment, Reed's disdain for Hollywood phoniness, Reynolds' frustration with difficult colleagues, and Gabber's unapologetic materialism all revealed aspects of humanity that made these stars more relatable, not less. The legacy of uncomfortable honesty. Looking back at these 6 explosive Carson interviews, it's clear they represent something we've largely lost in today's carefully managed celebrity culture. When was the last time you saw a major star truly risk their reputation with raw honesty on television? These moments remind us that behind the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, real people with real flaws and frustrations exist. Their willingness to drop their masks, even briefly, created television that wasn't just entertaining, it was authentic. In today's world of media training, publicist-approved talking points and carefully curated social media presences. These Carson guests stand as refreshing reminders of what happens when celebrities decide, for better or worse, that honesty matters more than image. What would happen if today's celebrities approached interviews with the same unfiltered honesty as Betty Davis or Richard Pryor? Would we celebrate their authenticity, or would cancel culture claim another victim? The answer says as much about our current relationship with celebrity culture as it does about how much television has changed since Carson's era. Perhaps the most significant legacy of these honest Carson moments is how they've become more valuable with time. In an era of carefully constructed reality shows and social media personas, designed to create the illusion of authenticity, these genuine moments of celebrity candor remind us what real honesty looks like. Uncomfortable, unplanned, and utterly compelling. Enjoyed this journey through some of television's most uncomfortably honest moments. Hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into classic Hollywood's most revealing moments. Which of these Carson guests surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below.